come a long way, you and me. But now my home is hunting us.
Hey guys, Society Reviews here, my review of the film Venom: The Last Dance. Believe it or not, I was one of the first people to defend the 2018 Venom movie against the narrative that it was a horrible comic book film. I was correct that the first Venom movie is not the bottom of the barrel of Marvel-related content. However, I failed to understand that the movies that would precede Venom would be far worse than anyone could imagine. In 2018, Venom provided a welcome change to an overcrowded superhero genre around the same time mainstream audiences were getting their kicks from Marvel Avenger movies. Tom Hardy plays the character of Eddie Brock, who's essentially a man possessed by an intergalactic space demon that gives him superpowers while turning their shenanigans to a cheesy buddy cop film. As with any comic book movie that makes a little bit of money, Sony decided to make a sequel titled Venom: Let There Be Carnage, and that was the exact moment that all the goodwill and grace of this franchise evaporated like a bottle of water spilled into a hot Arizona summer street. Let There Be Carnage failed because the filmmakers had no idea about any of the characters they were writing about. Sony took two of his most valuable properties and drove them into nothing more than one-note character jokes. By the time Venom was partying in San Francisco with a bunch of hipsters in the first 20 minutes of the film, I was ready to walk out and call the film one of the worst comic book movies I've ever seen. However, the film was still somewhat successful even though it made $350 million less worldwide than the previous film. Because the character of Venom is still loosely based around Sony's cash cow Spider-Man, the studio decided to end things on a low note by bringing us the final Venom movie entitled Venom: The Last Dance. Set after the events of the last movie, Eddie Brock and Venom are on the run by both the law and a nasty group of interdimensional demonic beings led by the god of all symbiotes, Null. Eddie and Venom contain the key to unlock Null from his interdimensional prison called the Void, and his release will cause the destruction of all worlds. Meanwhile, the deconstruction of Area 51 is taking place, and the government has captured 7 symbiotes in the last-ditch effort to study their origins and tap into their potential. Eddie and Venom are forced to make a devastating decision. For the world to be saved, one of them must die. What is the fundamental difference between Venom: The Last Dance and the film that came before it? Let There Be Carnage was a film that was so mind-numbingly stupid that it was considered an insult and a mockery for people who enjoy comic book films, as Sony was banking on audience seeing the movie by name recognition alone that they wouldn't care about the quality of the movie. When it comes to The Last Dance, Sony gimmick is claiming that this will be the final Venom movie of the franchise. However, the film is not insultingly stupid this time around, but it is insultingly boring. Venom: The Last Dance is one of the most poorly constructed movies of 2024. We get an introduction to the film's villain in the opening scene. The character of Null is the father of all symbiotes and wants revenge against those who sealed them away. But after this quick introduction, the film puts his audience in a series of scenes that have no symmetry with one another. It feels like you're watching 3 separate movies that were cut into one another rather than having one coherent movie. Picking up where they left off on the last film, the dialogue of this movie is absolutely abysmal. The buddy cop shtick between Eddie and Venom has long worn out its welcome, and as a result, the laughs between the two leads are few and far between. The dialogue is rotten, there's no weight to the story. The tone of the A, B, and C plots simply do not mesh. The film inexplicably takes a detour to Las Vegas to show off a couple of establishing shots of fancy hotels, while the Vegas connection ultimately leads to nothing, meaning the whole sequence could have been cut out of the film and it would have changed nothing at all. The movie is structurally about a villain turned anti-hero amongst a mindless scene of scientists and military men, making it very difficult to point out who exactly is the good guy in this story. The scientists care nothing about the loss of human life as long as they get to continue in their experiments. The military will stop at nothing to silence the truth from getting out to the public, which leaves us with our protagonist whose body count is probably more than the actual monsters in the movie. The film's final act dares to have an emotionally driven retrospective of the franchise as if anyone who has seen all 3 movies are going to have any fond memories of them when it's all said and done. There will be a strong debate about what is the worst comic book movie of 2024, and unfortunately Sony will have at least 2 films that will be in contention, with a 3rd film coming down the road. The common denominator of the critical failures of this franchise is writer and director Kelly Marcel, who is responsible for the screenplay of all 3 movies. When it's all said and done, Kelly delivers one of the most incoherent comic book franchises to ever exist. Whether Venom is cinematically the worst comic book trilogy of all time is up for audiences to decide, but Venom: The Last Dance certainly does not help the case against such a claim that it is the worst comic book trilogy ever made. I give this film a 0 out of 5.
Sexiest man of the year.
I've won Sexy Man Awards.
Of course you have.